Well, we hope not. We hope it's not going to be a disaster. What has already happened is a brazen act of aggression in violation of international law, in violation of the UN Charter, in violation of the Helsinki Final Act, in violation of the Helsinki Final Act, in violation of the 1997, has engaged in a military act of aggression against another country. And it has huge risks, George. It's a 19th century act in the 21st century that really puts at question Russia's capacity to be within the G8.
All right, folks, that was John Kerry the other day. He said more of that the same today. He was in Ukraine. President Obama spoke today. Lots going on. Joining us on the panel right now, our friends, Democratic strategist and columnist from Forbes magazine, Rick Ungar, and Newsmax White House correspondent, John Gizzi. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thanks, man. Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
All right, my pleasure. Okay, so let's start with Rick. You have a problem with the way Republicans have reacted to this? How so?
Well, you know, it was almost like a comedy watching the talk shows on Sunday morning. You would hear these Republican politicians mouthing their disdain for the president, calling him feckless, saying their eyes were rolling, and telling us how everything he's done has led to Putin's move against the Ukraine. But you know what they would never do? They would never give us the second sentence by saying why his policies have led to what happened in the Ukraine. I'd love someone to tell me, because they must be the same policies that weak, feckless presidency that preceded Obama must have had when they sat by when Putin rolled into Georgia.
Well, okay, fair point, except, John, there are differences, and without addressing the first, I'll address the second part of the question. Certainly Ukraine, which borders 4 NATO countries, is a bigger deal than Georgia was, although, go ahead, you take up the mantle here.
I categorically disagree with Rick Ungar on this, Steve, because remember something. 5 years ago, President George Bush, during the Georgia invasion, immediately voiced strong solidarity with the government of President Saakashvili. Not only that, he had C-17 transport planes bringing back the finest Georgian soldiers who were helping the effort in Afghanistan and in Iraq. He brought them back. By that time, however, the Russians had just overrun Ossetia completely and declared it an ersatz independent state. In Ukraine right now, I've talked to members of Congress. You'll see my interview in Newsmax with Congressman Adam Kinzinger, member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, who points out, after Syria, when so many people were poised to support the president, including President Hollande of France, he suddenly backed down and wound up acquiescing to President Putin. These are the kind of actions that the Kremlin watches carefully, and now the chickens have come home to roost.
And yet, not 2 hours ago, I watched Congressman Kinzinger on television complimenting, and I underline the word complimenting, President Obama for the steps he's taken and the steps he suggested to take. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Tell me how. Somebody's got to tell me how what Obama has done up until last week when Putin got his nose out of joint and went off and did this, what would have been different if the president had taken his shirt off and gotten on a horse and been all rough and tough? Tell me what would have happened differently.
Well, I think for one thing, if the president had reacted strongly and immediately followed the examples of Austria and Switzerland, and who froze the assets of deposed Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych and moved to freeze President Putin's assets. Second, imposed the Magnitsky Law.
At what point would he have frozen?
Let me finish.
It doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. At what point?
Let him finish. He said immediately after the action.
That's not the question I asked. No. The question I asked, if over the past number of years, if the Obama administration had been rough and tough, and as I said, he had posed shirtless on a horse, what would have been different about what Putin did? You're telling me what you think he should have done within seconds of it happening. I understand. What would have been a different result if he had acted differently? Would Putin not have gone into Crimea?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why.
Please.
Ronald, let me just quote to you what President Mikhail Gorbachev said when he appeared in North Carolina about 15 years ago. He was asked his impression at a forum on Ronald Reagan, and the first thing he said was he meant what he said, and he cited the fact that Reagan fired the striking air traffic controllers in 1981, and that was directly related to the eventual fall of the Soviet Union, because people knew what he said he meant. President Obama led people to believe there would be an airstrike in Syria, and I'm not taking sides on it one way or another. And then he backed down completely on this.
All due respect.
Well, let me throw something in here.
We're not getting to it.
First of all, we're talking about the reset. The reset has been a disaster. Trusting Putin as if he never was who he was with the KGB, as if he never had designs. Even Madeleine Albright, in the words of Madeleine Albright, he's delusional. But, you know, we saw him, Obama whisper in the ear of the
Yes.
president of Russia on an open mic and say, you tell Putin I'll have more latitude, you know, after the elections, my good buddy Vladimir. Now, here's what he said. Here's how he mocked Mitt Romney when Mitt Romney made an accurate statement. This is back in the 2012 debate on Russia. Here's cut 6. This is cut number 6.
When you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not Al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because the Cold War has been over for 20 years.
Russia, I indicated, is a geopolitical foe. Not a, excuse me, it's a geopolitical foe. And I said in the same paragraph, I said, and Iran is the greatest national security threat we face. Russia does continue to battle us in the UN time and time again. I have clear eyes on this. I'm not going to wear rose-colored glasses when it comes to Russia or Mr. Putin.
That exactly, Rick, is what set the tone, and what actually the tone was set the first go-round of the first 4 years. The differing views on Russia, Romney correct, and Obama saying, hey, there's no more Cold War. The 80s Cold War, they want their policy back. Oh. He's a friend.
So Romney was correct. Romney was correct. You guys think that Russia poses a bigger threat to us than Al-Qaeda?
Geopolitical.
No.
Well, John Kerry says the biggest threat, or just as big a... John Kerry says the biggest threat, or just as big a threat as Al-Qaeda and terror in Iran, is global warming. That is the issue.
No, it's not. Global warming we talked about 2 weeks ago. Let's talk about what's happening with Russia and Ukraine.
But John did, and John told you what he could do in the aftermath, and you wanted to know what led to Putin doing it.
Yeah,
that's
I
part
do.
of it.
I still want to know because you haven't told me.
Well, let John go. John, talk.
Yeah, thank you. Freeze his assets, just as Yanukovych's assets were frozen. Urge other supportive countries in the West to do the same.
But what led to it, John?
And I'm all for it.
Impose the Magnitsky Act, which would simply deny visas to key Russians from coming to the United States, doing business. That would hit the Russians very hard, and that would also embolden Mr. Putin's opponents within the Kremlin. And
John, I'm with you all the way on that. I really am. Yeah. But that doesn't answer the question.
John, we got a minute, John. So if you're going to answer, we got 30 seconds to answer what led to it.
I'm sorry, what?
What led to Putin to think he could get away with this? What Obama
do we do now? What was Obama's actions? I think you were saying that it was Syria. And what cracks me up is everybody seems to want to forget that the Republicans in the House had made it clear to President Obama they were not going to vote for his action in Syria.
Because
that's why he backed off of it.
No, but he didn't have to go.
You
know, and we all know, Rick, that he didn't have to go to Congress. He could have come to us and say, I just launched missiles because blah, 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 and that would have been the end of it. He doesn't have the guts to do anything, and Putin knows it.
Which I might add President Hollande had done.
All right, John, quickly, go ahead, 10 seconds.
Yeah. President Hollande, defying public opinion in his own country, was prepared to support such a move even after the British House.
All right, John, gotta go. John Gizzi and Rick Kaplan, we'll see you back here in an hour. Don't go away, folks. Coming back. Steve Malzberg Show.